Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. It is a few minutes after 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, How to Grow Member Lifetime Value in Challenging Times. We'd like to start by taking a moment to thank our sponsor for today's webinar, Points for Purpose. With that said, we will now share this short video that tells the story, Points for Purpose story.
They call it the new normal. Millions of businesses are closing, and no one has been left untouched. Supporting economic recovery and building community are now more important than ever. Loyalty programs can make a real difference. Yet, with over 3.8 billion loyalty memberships, people are active in less than half. At the same time, charities are struggling to source vital fundraising. There is a solution. Introducing Points for Purpose, the loyalty platform that gives back. By bringing brands, businesses, and charities together, customers can now shop, spend, earn, and donate their loyalty points to the charities they love, turning points into purpose and shoppers into donors. Points for Purpose engages customers, supports charities, and in doing so, does good in the world at the time we need this most. Points for Purpose, the loyalty platform that gives back.
Great, thank you, Points for Purpose, for today's sponsorship. Now let's take a moment for some brief introductions from our panel. My name is Brian Conroy. I am the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at TransFund. TransFund is a national EFT and ATM card processor for both debit and credit cards, serving the industry 50 plus years, serving our financial institution clients. I would now like to welcome our panelists for today's webinar, who will now take a few moments and introduce those. We have Brian from American Heritage. We have Nick from Children's Miracle Network Hospitals, and Lisa from Pug Interactive. She should be hopefully joining us here momentarily, but we'll go ahead and get started with some introductions from both Brian and Nick. So Brian, why don't you kick it off for some brief introductions?
Yep, thanks, Brian, and thanks for Points for Purpose for inviting me to speak on the panel on behalf of the credit union. So again, my name is Brian Eichenbaum. I am the Senior Vice President of Consumer Lending, work for American Heritage. For those that don't know us, we are a federally chartered credit union in Northeast Philadelphia. We're about $4.6 billion in assets. We are the 75th largest in terms of membership, slightly over 300,000 members. And we have about 35 branches throughout the Southeast Pennsylvania and New Jersey market. And we're proud to support this panel and share a little insight on what we do to provide value and looking to differentiate and and finding unique ways to connect with our members and our communities that we serve.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. Nick, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you as well to Points for Purpose for inviting myself and Children's Miracle Network Hospitals to participate. So I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships for Children's Miracle Network Hospitals, working specifically with the credit union industry through a program called Credit Unions for Kids, where we raise funds for 170 children's hospitals in the United States and Canada. And I'm sure there's a number of folks on here that have been supporters, and if so, thank you. But especially Brian, I know at American Heritage, you all are very, very generous supporters to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. So it's a pleasure to be on the panel with you in particular. Thank you for what you and American Heritage have done, and I look forward to the rest of the session. Thanks for being here, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Nick. As I mentioned, we did have one other panelist, Lisa from Pug Interactive. But again, we will go ahead and get started, and hopefully Lisa can join us sometime midstream during today's event. Just a quick housekeeping as a reminder regarding any questions that attendees might have. We will carve out time at the end of today's discussion for Q&A. So if you would be so kind as to please send any questions that you might have through the chat feature within the webinar platform. Steve Dart is leading that from a moderator perspective behind the scenes, and then Steve will go ahead and get me those individual questions again near the end of today's discussion. Ivan, did you want to say anything at this point, or should we dive in?
I was just going to suggest, obviously this is live and something must have happened with Lisa. I'm happy to step in until Lisa arrives, Brian, and perhaps field some of the questions that we've prepared for her, so that at least we've got continuity. And I'll be very happy to drop out when Lisa, if and when Lisa, obviously something's happened on her front, but I'm happy to the best of my ability, respond to the questions that were designated for her.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you, Ivan. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Brian. With that said, this is very exciting. We're going to go ahead and get started. I think what I'll do is field a question to Brian, and then I'll kick an additional question over to Nick just to start out. So, right. Brian, you have the first question here on stage, and that is, awesome. I do know American Heritage Credit Union is very supportive in the Philadelphia community. Would you please give us some examples and share us some examples of how you as the credit union give back to the community?
Yep, be happy to do that. Thanks, Brian. And thanks, Nick, for all the kind words before. So those that don't know, American Heritage has a long and distinguished track record of just being socially responsible, and we've been awarded for outstanding community involvement and charitable support. There's a Dora Maxwell Award that's given out for that. And believe it or not, the credit union has received it 27 straight years for nationally on the state level. And, a lot of that has to do with the team and the work that we do in the community. And so we, probably about 26, 27 years ago, our philanthropy really started through our Kids in Hope Foundation. Through that foundation, we've raised about $3.6 million for local hospitals like Nick mentioned, like the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, CHOP, and for other nonprofit organizations that support children's health and life services. In addition to our foundation, we've really established numerous internal programs and committees. So this might go to your question, Brian. We made, and these committees are really just made up internally of just our staff, and they're run independently by our staff. In totality, they make a real big impact to our members and the communities that we serve. Two examples that come to mind: we do Adopt a Family, a program that helps family needs during the holiday season. We raise money for 12 to 14, 15 families. Really makes a big impact during the holiday times. And we also do another one that's called Books for Kids, another program that promotes childhood and young adult literacy. So those are two that come to mind internally. We do a lot of big events. Those that are familiar, our campus lights up. We light up over 400,000 lights in our campus right around November. And it becomes a top 10 destination for people to come through and drive through and see the campus lights. We host a lot of big events where over 20,000 community and members and non-members come in. We do fireworks show. We have the Philadelphia Boys Choir that comes through. And these are things that really just differentiate and makes us unique in our local neighborhoods.
Thank you, Brian. I love to hear from a corporate initiative perspective how involved the employees get to participate. It really unifies kind of the credit union, and that that resonates across the member base, right? And so it's great to hear.
Brian, absolutely. And it's one thing to have a why, a reason for cause, but it's another thing for your entire organization to live it. And it's very empowering. If you walk into American Heritage, you can see that through every department that our team really lives that cause-based, and it's really a joy to see every day.
That's great. It becomes a staple of your core values. I love it. Thank you,
absolutely.
Brian. Yeah. Nick, I will turn it over to you. I know just from an understanding perspective, what is the connection between Children's Miracle Network hospitals and Credit Union for Kids? I know that there's some distinctions there, and I think it would be good for the panel, for the attendees to kind of listen before we dive into some of your other questions that relate to those.
Yeah, it's a fair question. It's a bit of an intricate model. I'm curious if you participated in credit unions for kids, or maybe a fundraise for Salmon hospitals in a different way. I'd love to learn about it. So throw it in the chat if you'd like. But while you're thinking of that, I'd be happy to explain. So let's start with Children's Miracle Network Hospitals. We'll start with a larger organization and narrow our focus. Children's Miracle Network is an organization that represents 170 children's hospitals in the United States and Canada. So we've created this network of hospitals, and what we recognize is that these hospitals do a great job at engaging local donors and businesses to fund, because these are nonprofit children's hospitals that require donations to be able to exist, to be able to not even just exist, but then to provide and innovate and provide advanced healthcare. And so they engage local donors well. Where they may struggle is engaging national or international companies. And that's where we step in. We build the network of 170 hospitals, and representing them, we go to large organizations, and we build partnerships with them so that they can fundraise for their local children's hospital. And so that's really at a basic level the idea behind Children's Miracle Network Hospitals. We have built partnerships with some of our top fundraising partners are Costco, Walmart, 7-Eleven, Panda Express, Marriott, Ace Hardware. And then obviously the credit union industry is one of our top fundraising partners. This year alone, or this year in 2023, we're going to surpass $200 million raised by credit unions. And they do that under the banner of a program called Credit Unions for Kids. So Credit Unions for Kids is really the brand name that captures all of credit union giving for children's hospitals. And so Credit Unions for Kids is one of the many ways that children's hospitals raises funds for our network of hospitals. But I want to emphasize that it is one of the most successful because of the generosity and the great heart of people and organizations like Brian and American Heritage, and I'm sure many people on this call.
Great, thank you, Nick. I know I can speak from personal experience. We at TransFund participate. We have an affinity debit card for Children's Miracle Network. So our financial institutions have the ability to issue that card to their member and customer base, and a portion of that interchange income is then funded towards Children's Miracle Network. So it's near and dear to my heart, and I appreciate you, kind of distinguishing between those, Nick. All right, Ivan, I will go ahead and kick over to you a question that we had bucketed for Lisa. How are you currently using data and analytics to enhance acquisition and retention strategies within Points for Purpose?
Okay, so this is on the fly, folks. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. Look, we are a platform provider that enables corporations. Nick, you were talking about some of the powerhouses of US business, and really congratulations to you to have engaged with organizations like this. And then Brian E on the credit union front, getting that alignment such that there is something in it, obviously, for the member, the credit union member, okay? And unapologetically, and this might be a little controversial, but there is an ROI. We call it an ROD, as in the D being donation. There is an ROD back to the corporation, okay? And we launched Points for Purpose in the US in June, and our theme was purpose to profit and profit to purpose. And so all the data, to answer your question, Brian, that is coming back suggests that if it's done right, we can not only support the wonderful work that Children's Miracle Networks are doing and others, but we can actually provide an ROI to the Walmarts of our world. Because why shouldn't they be able to see that in terms of the transactions that are happening at their point of sale across their networks? And so the data We don't have too many out there walking that walk, I have to say, but those that are doing it well are seeing a lift in average transaction value, are actually seeing a dividend for the good work that they are doing. So the numbers support the notion, the data supports the fact that when it's done right, there is a dividend for the individual, for the corporation, and ultimately for the cause, like what Nick has been talking about there as well. The numbers are very supportive of the initiative, unquestionably.
Excellent. Thank you, Ivan. And I'm a big believer of data. It's how you use that data, what segmentation you use within that data to target the different segments that you're looking to drive, you know, acquisition, activation, usage, and retention. So appreciate the on-the-fly response. All right, we're going to go to a question for all of the panel. So this is just a general question that Nick, I'll kick it over to you first, and then Brian, I'll kick it over to you second for that same question. I will repeat it twice for each of you. So Nick, first question in terms of a common question over to you. In your opinion, how have credit unions or businesses in general successfully engaged members in your experience?
How to come off mute? It's a good question. I think well, especially with the lens that I have, I think as myself being a millennial, it's kind of a cliche term, but I think it's cliche because of how true it is. And it's just the idea of meeting members where they are at. And so a lot like myself, my peers, folks my age are often online. We're on the go. So using mobile applications, digital tools and stuff like that is really crucial in general for credit unions to be able to engage people like at least myself and with the technology that we prefer to use. But there's a second piece, and this is in particular with the lens that I have and the research we've seen at CMN hospitals, is that members, or even outside of just the idea of a credit union member, but consumers in general, they do business with organizations that they align with, the organizations that are investing in their communities, making the community they live in a better place to live, work, and play. And so they're going to build affinity, and not only an affinity but trust and loyalty towards organizations that have values and stand up for those values and showcase those values. And even further than that, like, don't just talk the talk but walk the walk, and actually make a difference within the community for things that you care about. And obviously for Children's Miracle Network hospitals, we've seen credit unions and a ton of different industries and large organizations build a huge affinity towards, and they've seen their customers and their employees build an affinity for children's health and wanting to advance that, knowing that children's hospitals are treating over 12 million children a year here in the United States. Can almost guarantee anyone on this line has some kind of 1 or 2 degree connection to a family member or a friend who has been treated by a children's hospital and needed that advanced healthcare in their community. And so for our cause, at least in particular, we've seen this being a huge motivator for consumers, for members, and for employees to rally around. And they've really appreciated when when organizations they do business with have also invested and realized that themselves.
So
true,
Nick.
Answer.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that hits home for sure. So Brian, again, question is, how have credit unions or businesses in general successfully engaged members in your experience?
Yeah, and I'm going to piggyback off a little bit of what Nick said. So I love that whole idea of being genuine and meeting people where they're at, because that really is what the credit movement does really well. And so when when I think of business overall, our job is to really differentiate, right? Because if you don't differentiate, you wind up in any industry competing on price. And there's really a lot of unspoken truth about what's going on in our industry, the credit union industry. And every leader that's on the credit union industry would agree that, we're a consolidating industry. And a lot of that is because we can't grow and we can't differentiate and we can't remain relevant to our members. And, and for the leaders on this call, I was just laughing about this with another person here at American Heritage. The easiest day to lead at a credit union was yesterday. It doesn't get easier. Our job is harder every day. And so, you have to have a really good framework. And when we think about it here at American Heritage and over the other credit unions that I've worked at, there are a couple of things that are really common. So one is we put people over profit, and meaning that, we don't look at a person as a profitable transaction. We look at the person and we say, you know what, every single decision, we have to make sure we're doing the right thing for our member. And so we put the person over profit, and that comes across in everything that we do. A great example of that would be, at American Heritage, we don't surcharge for any ATMs, members or non-members. And, and you think about it, Wawa does the same thing when you go to a gas station, right? Cash, credit card or debit card or cash, same cost. And right away, it just builds a level of trust. We don't sell here at American Heritage, right? We educate first, sell second. And in fact, if it doesn't make sense, we tell our member, listen, you know what? Your car loan at $299, that's a great rate. You should keep that. And, so we really have honest conversations. And I think that really sets up, that kind of goes where Nick said, meeting the member where they're at. The one thing I can say here at American Heritage, we have a great team. I consider a world-class team, but we have a team that when we hire them and when we train them, they believe in delivering service first, right? So it's not about selling, it's about meeting them where they're at, delivering great service. We might not be able to help them, but we always find a way to make their life and day better. And then the other thing is team, if they're put in the right position, they can be successful. So every day, every leader here tries to make sure that there's an environment that every team member, when they show up, they can be their best. And so we do those 4 things consistently and every day. And I think those are the things that make us better. And that's how we kind of, walk the talk every day. So those are things that we do. Those are things that I've learned throughout the credit union. And this is why, I think everyone that's watching this and that's leading at a credit union, this is why we lead here, because, we get to help people. We don't have to worry about the profits first. At least I hope that's what everyone's trying to strive to do, because that's what we do at American Heritage.
Can I interject? That's
Sure.
a lot of what you said was really interesting, Brian. But it seems like a bold. I obviously, I mean, I don't work at a credit union, but it seems like a bold move to not charge the surcharge for ATMs. But that's really awesome. Like, what was with your position at American Heritage? Were you involved in that decision making? I'm kind of curious how that came.
It was support of the board. It came from our CEO. We have a CEO that's been here for 42 years. He's built the credit union from 5 million to 4.6 billion. And think about Starbucks. Let me give you a good parallel, right? Starbucks, no matter what happens to their financial, they believe in healthcare, right? They believe that every single part-time or full-time employee should have healthcare. It was a given right. I believe the founder, their father had cancer, or one of their parents had cancer, and they didn't have access to healthcare. Well, it's the same thing. Our core value is we are here to help the underserved. We have 4 underserved areas. Most of the branches we built are areas that other banks and credit unions don't want to go into. We've taken dilapidated buildings and we built branches that are beautiful, but we're here to help the underserved. So we always believe that it's in our mission to give back. And these are the undeniable things that we will not give up. And so surcharge free ATMs, we believe it or not, we still have a free checking account. And I think 99% of leaders on this call would probably say, you know what, we dropped that 2 years ago. It's not profitable. And we believe that, if you're going to walk the talk and live your mission, you should really hold on to things that really make a difference. And that's what we do here. We really try to help our members every day. We understand that we're going to have some folks that might be doing well in different parts of the Philadelphia, but most of our members are living paycheck to paycheck. And we want to make sure that we're making a positive impact in their lives every day.
Great, Brian, I'm going to kick over just a follow-up question for you. How does putting persons over profits do to the bottom line, number one, and number two, overall loyalty and long lifetime value?
Yeah, it's one of those chicken and eggs, right? Is it values that drive profit, or is it profit that drives value? And so we inherently believe that our values drive profit, meaning if we do the right things, people will do more with us. And so, and to that extent, it's always worked. In our conversations, we've never talked about, how much money have we made this month. We've talked about all the good deeds that we've done, and because of that, look at the capital that we were able to give, and how can we give that back? And it's one of those. I don't know if anyone follows Jim Collins, but I'm a big Jim Collins fan, and Good to Great. And it's that flywheel effect. And so we believe that putting values first and doing good has a cyclical flywheel effect and creates momentum and goodwill with our members. And by doing that, our members do more with us. And so that is really what's happened. And, could we be more profitable? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, how much money do you need? And, and is doing great more important than earning more? And we 100% believe that doing great things for members is more important than earning and having 20% capital, as an example.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you for that, Brian. Nick, I'm going to kick over a question targeted towards you. Children's Miracle Network Hospitals is one of the more popular charities amongst credit unions. Can you give us some examples of some events that credit unions run to support that cause?
Yeah. Fortunately, that's true. So again, back to the generosity of credit unions. We're certainly grateful for them stepping up. Yes, to support CMN hospitals, but honestly, I mean, they've done a great job at identifying important community needs all over the country, and really, I think credit unions in general, that popular philosophy or motto of people helping people is truly being lived out in practice, and they're helping solve community issues in a variety of ways. And fortunately, they've identified children's health as one of those important things. Successful ways we fundraise. So our program, we actually raise about 70% of our funds through event-based initiatives. I think you even mentioned events in particular, Brian. So, for example, we have, I want to say about 7 signature events, so to speak. We have a wine auction out in Southern California. Well, it kind of is wine auctions and golf. We apparently credit unions like the golf, and they like their wine.
Sign me up.
Yeah. Hey, that's why I try not to tell anyone at my organization how great my job is, because I get to golf and drink wine, but there's a little bit more to it than that, I should admit. No. So there's a number of wine auctions, golf tournaments, big ones and I think what the real cool value is that credit unions, even though they're all their own institutions with their own goals and objectives, they've obviously come together to identify themselves as cooperators, folks that can work together for common good, to help the community. And so CU for Kids, I think one of the reasons it's been so successful with these events is because it's been a platform for good and a platform for credit unions to work together. And that's translated from them working together in a fun way and an impactful way to them being able to work together on important business, whether it's advocacy with lawmakers or it's marketing campaigns, it's awareness on what the differentiating a credit union compared to other financial institutions, et cetera. So I think those events have been really key. And of course, like I said, one of the reasons over 70% of the funds we raised last year, $14.6 million alone, has been great. But in addition to that, we certainly do. I mean, the creative things that we see credit unions get up to is amazing. There's in-branch fundraising, selling like our staple paper balloon icon. You may have seen that if you've checked out at an Ace Hardware or Costco or Walmart, et cetera. Those have been sold. In fact, you mentioned ATMs earlier, Brian, but some credit unions do donate a portion of their surcharge fee for ATMs. Actually, a couple of them, they talk about how easy it is, and they raise over 6 figures a year. And then we own kind of like a suite of programs at CMN that credit unions have gotten involved with. One's called Extra Life. It's a gaming. So people that are gamers, they spend all day gaming and they raise money to do so. So it's kind of a win-win for them. We also have a collegiate fundraising program that dance marathons have sponsored and gotten involved with so that they can educate the younger demographics on what credit unions are and helping to make an impact then as well. And things like radiothons is kind of the final thing I'd mention. So it's really all across the board. And I just want to add a few fun things that I've seen. There's a gelatin Olympics somewhere out on the East Coast post that benefits us. That's one I need to get to at some point. There's a hot dog eating contest. There's a credit union that sells hummingbirds or ornaments during the holidays. So there's no lack of creativity in the credit union space, and that's proven through credit unions for kids. That's for sure.
Yeah. Nick,
can I come back to you, Nick? You mentioned some powerhouses in the retail sector a little while ago. Okay. Yet you say that upwards of 70% of the fundraising is event-based. To me, I don't want to be kind of provocative here, but we're having an open conversation. Do you think that the opportunity with retail is really being realized? If you look at the collective powerhouse of credit unions across the US, and then you equate those with the retailers that are out there, it's kind of surprising to me that that percentage of fundraising from those retail outlets, if I'm understanding you correctly, is so small relative to event-based. I mean, event-based has been around since the year dot, right? Why do you think retailers are not more engaged with supporting the causes in a very real sense at the checkout?
I'm glad you asked, because I think I didn't communicate it as clearly as I could have. So it's a very fair question. Thank you, Ivan. Credit unions for kids, that specific program is the one that is 70% event-based fundraising. Okay. The rest of our partnerships, so like it's a huge percentage. I'd say, I don't know off the top of my head, 90%, if not more, is point of sale fundraising. So you go as you check out, you can round up, you know, they're like on the pin pad, it allows you to round up, or you can purchase a balloon or something like that. So it's a good point. It is mostly point of sale for our retail partnerships for sure. But it's a good point with credit unions for kids. I mean, honest, like I joke with my boss, I say, hey, there's 130 million credit union members. The day we can get $1 donation from, like a digital donation from $1 from every member, is the day I'll retire. But, you know, I mean, that's obviously fun to say. I mean, like the potential is there. And so we've worked on digital tools like that would ideally be pretty frictionless and allow a member to simply make a donation when they're logged into online or mobile banking. We found the reality to making that happen is somewhat challenging, but we are trying to move the Credit Unions for Kids program to diversify it outside of just events and become more of kind of the credit union point of sale, so to speak.
You see, if I may just say, the roundup that you referred to, Nick, is still the member putting his or her hand in their pocket. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
The challenge that, you know, that we bring to the conversation is, how about that retailer putting their hands in their pockets for the right to sell to Brian Eichenbaum's members? Why not? Okay. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about member lifetime value from the retailer's point of view, they talk about customer lifetime value. Brian talks about member lifetime value. And I think to the core question of today's webinar is, how do we get that balance right? How do we actually, if Brian Eichenbaum is sending a member into Walmart, that's potentially a new customer to Walmart, or at the very least, an increased transaction value at Walmart. And that shouldn't be up to the member to then fund out of their roundup. Ideally, you've got a matching thing in play. Then you get your 117 becomes 234. Okay. But the proposition Points for Purpose brings to market is that reward to the member can ultimately become a fundraising opportunity to Children's Miracle Network. Okay. Yeah. Funded by the retailer. And I know, Brian Conroy, you and I have spoken about that. and to their credit, we see Target USA doing that right now with Target Circle. Okay. Yep. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. And they are seeing an uplift in average transaction value for those target circle members who are supporting a cause, okay, that they are passionate about. And that's the purpose in Points for Purpose. So I'm listening to you really carefully, Nick, and I think you're letting the retailer off the hook there by expecting the member to put their hands in their pockets. The retailer should be saying thank you for that transaction and thereby supporting Children's Miracle Network.
Yeah, and Ivan, can I share with you a twist that we do in American Heritage? So we agree. So we 100% agree, and trying to get a merchant or a third party that has no relationship with the credit union is difficult. And so what we've done is so on our debit and credit cards, we've actually branded our credit cards with a heart that support our foundation. And every transaction that our members go out and use their cards, we donate 1 cent to our foundation, which goes to our both to our charitable donations. And annually we collect about 600,000. So we are not taking it out of the merchants' pockets, we're taking it out of our own pockets.
Why?
But we're doing this because
why, Brian?
And our members love that. And and we don't advertise our credit cards, we advertise the fact that our card does well and does good. It's one of those, if you have the ability to do better, you should do better. And so that's really our approach. And so, I would love it, Ivan, if we can convince the merchant to double that and make it 2 cents. And that we can donate $1.2 million back, and that way we can do better, and donate more to Children's Hospital and help more than the music therapy program. And that, and we should do it back and really push the merchants to do more. But unfortunately, regulations are actually reducing interchange, and it's going again. So we're really fighting really hard to preserve our mission. And and if Points for Purpose can do that for us and help us solve it, that's great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Nick was talking about Roundup. Now you're talking about the interchange fee. And I know, Brian Conroy, you and I have spoken about this as well. It shouldn't be coming out of the pockets of the credit union, for heaven's sake. That makes no sense. I repeat, if you are sending your members into Store X and you can track it, that store should be saying thank you. Okay. And if the store is saying thank you by supporting CMN, bring it on. Okay. And if they do that well, they will grow their bottom line. They will support the cause, and the member is the conduit. And that, guys, is absolutely the core of. So instead of it being a cost item on your P&L, Brian, it becomes a revenue item, and ultimately the member chooses, okay? And supporting choice is just absolutely fundamental to this. So we're kind of flipping the paradigm. I'll never forget one of our early credit union conversations. The fellow we were speaking with, your equivalent, Brian, at another credit union, there was like a gasp of silence. Like, you mean we don't have to fund this? You better believe it. So that customer lifetime value, that member lifetime value equation that you were talking about, Brian, the flip side of that is the customer lifetime value to the retailer. And you can only start to measure the customer when they become a customer, okay? When they become a member, even a member to a retail loyalty program. And, you mentioned, Nick, millennials. How challenging is it to get people's attention, even for a millisecond? And that's a key thing. With all the social media that's out there right now, how do you actually grab someone's attention? Well, we think a smart way to do that is to actually ask them what gets them going in the morning. And if Children's Miracle Network does that, you cannot believe from a retail perspective how powerful that is to actually get someone on the treadmill, to actually engage them. And that, Nick, is what you do, you know, and you deserve, as a, you know, I've read up a little bit about the work you guys do. You know, why should the member be rounding that up on their own? Ideally, we want two levels of contribution: A, from the member, and B, from the retailer, to say thank you for a new customer. And that's, you know, and you want to do that seamlessly. And I can assure you, Brian E., that when you talk about that as an engagement opportunity, that is core to what our platform is about. And I would love to continue that conversation with you at another time.
Sounds great.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll have time for one more question and I'll kick this one over to Brian to kind of close us out on our general panelist questions. And then we'll open it up to the attendee questions. I do have one here in my chat so far. So since we were on the topic of merchants and retailers, Brian, I thought I would kick this one over to you. You know, do you work with local merchants in your footprint of your branches to provide discounts to your members?
Of course, and Nick touched on a few, but I'll touch on a couple of different ones. So for those that remember, we're from Philadelphia American Heritage. So the people of Philadelphia, we love our sports. And so we have direct partnerships with the Phillies, the Sixers, the Flyer organizations. And we offer discounted tickets to our members throughout the year. And those proceeds go directly to support our foundation. So that's one way we do it. And also throughout the month, we invite local restaurants and their food trucks on campus. And, you know, and our staff and our members, they're out there supporting those local businesses. And those proceeds are also donated back to our foundation. Also, we partner with local art museums. We are American Heritage, so we're branded as such. We are on the board for the American Revolution Museum. We partner with rental car companies and all different sorts of travel companies. We have a whole member discount page that goes into phone services and other discounts, because again, living today is tough. And most of our members live paycheck to paycheck. So if we can save them 20% on their cable bill, their phone bills, things of that nature, we're definitely there trying to deliver value back to our members. And it doesn't have to be financial services. So, you know, we believe that today we are a financial service organization, but look at Amazon. Amazon did not stick in bookstores, right? They became a full-fledged online distributor, and now they are the largest retailer. So we see ourselves as a credit union, but we really see ourselves as an organization that can help members in our local community, and we will do whatever it takes. And it doesn't have to be financial services.
Great, thank you, Brian. Well, that will end at least the panelist direct questions. I'm going to turn it over and field some questions from the attendees here. I do have one in my chat, so this will be for both Nick and Brian. Nick, why don't you go ahead and field the first response, and then we'll kick it over to Brian. So, question coming in from the attendants is, from a communication point of view, how do you maintain engagement and member motivation?
Good question. So our brand is a little bit more B2B. So we're not communicating as much directly with the members ourselves, the Children's Miracle Network hospitals, but we do work with credit unions to be able to engage with their members, be able to show the impact. And that's done in a couple of different ways. I think what's unique about this program too, in particular, is like the communication. It is often what the impact that a children's hospital has, or that a credit union has for a children's hospital in a local community. But we also have this national brand that we're trying to communicate. It's credit unions coming together as a collective. And I think what we've learned is to lead with the impact. So one thing that we do have a challenge with at CMN hospitals is that the funds we provide to children's hospitals are unrestricted, meaning that we're not going to mandate how a hospital spends any of the dollars that we help raise for them, but instead we identify that depending on their geographic location and so many other different factors, they're going to know how to best use their funds. But So the challenge though is that funds are unrestricted. It's hard to showcase what exactly the impact has. If you're looking at an organization like Tom's, you know that when you buy a pair of shoes from Tom's, a pair of shoes is donated to someone in need. So the impact is really clear. It's very real and obvious. But with Seaman Hospital, it's kind of hard to communicate because so what we've tried to do is we've tried to bucket it and try to still. So I think that the storytelling is important here. So what we've done is we've surveyed our hospitals to better understand what are the types of things you spend your money in. And we found out there's 6 primary buckets. Some of those include like new equipment, new advanced research, child life programs, charitable care programs to make sure that children's hospitals treat every kid and don't turn anyone away. So we found out like about percentage wise how much they're spending on each of those different categories. And we use that to communicate. So I think a big piece of it, I guess, at the end of the day is shaping the story around the impact that you're having in communities, and credit unions do that so powerfully. I mean, that's the mission of a credit union is to help support the community. And so I think what's important is to identify that impact and be able to in a passionate way tell the story of what the impact those funds or whatever the type of work you're doing is having for them and for their fellow community members.
I love that, Nick. And so there's a lot to unpack in that question. So I'll just hit on a couple examples. So for those that, are familiar with Philadelphia, we're a bunch of neighborhoods that are knitted together, and everybody that lives in that neighborhood, they know each other. I mean, they're multi-generational families that live in the neighborhood. And so what we try to do is contribute back to the neighborhood. When we build our branches, we build them as part of the neighborhood. So if you think about Starbucks and how they have that whole neighborhood approach about how they want to be part of the neighborhood, well, that's what our branches are. So we have 35 branches. All those branches have community centers that are built in. So these aren't small 1,000 square foot branches, they're bigger. We invite our community in, we stay active, and we try to tell the story of each neighborhood. We hire from the neighborhood, we work directly with the neighborhoods, we sponsor events in the neighborhood. So we have that from an individual approach. And then our macro approach is really not to overwhelm our members with a ton of communication, but make it respectful and do it in a way that is responsible. So we'll do mailers. We still send out a quarterly newsletter, during the holidays and the summer and the winter. We do mail. We do a lot of digital these days because obviously you got to move to digital. We're doing a lot of texting, but also when members come in, we have 2 phone centers. We have 35 branches that they can walk into. We have 2 different video chat centers where members can actually transact through us. New members can actually join us through our Vanna service and speak to an individual and actually join and speak to somebody on a live teller, and these are different ways. So you really just have to meet the member where they are. So we have a big, broad corporate approach, and then we have the individual neighborhood approach. And that really serves us really well.
Thank you, Brian. I know that there's many other questions that we have gathered here in the chat. We would love to, be able to respond to those, but for the sake of today's discussion, what we'll do is those questions that have been asked, we will regroup as a team and make sure we follow up, whether that be of an email direct to you or some type of communication to follow up on some of the questions from the attendees that have raised their hand today. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to you, Ivan, for some final closing remarks as we're wrapping things up this afternoon.
Okay. Well, I've kind of had more to say today than I had intended. So I'll keep this real short. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I have to say, just Nick, non-specific funding is never going to be, I'm sure you would agree, as impactful as having specific funding that people understand how their support is actually landing and the impact that they are personally having. And so I'd urge that to be considered from a charity perspective. We have come up with that before. And then Brian Eichenbaum, the retailers should be participating directly in the process, and we've got some really, really cool seamless solutions that measure the ROI to them in getting involved directly in the process, and very happy to continue that conversation as well. So look, firstly, Brian Conroy, thank you. I know you've been running around the country and playing a bit of golf, but getting out there. Thank you for moderating today as well as you have. To Nick and Brian, thank you for being part of this. This is our first In Conversation webinar, and I think it's the technology has certainly held up really well. For those that don't know, we did launch. We've been in the game of cause-related marketing in Australia for the past 3 years. We took the plunge and launched into the US in New York in June. So it's really early days for us, as I said before, with the theme of purpose to profit. And today, I hope you've heard that we continue that theme with the lens in this conversation being around credit unions and community banks, I have to add. And the question is why credit unions in particular? And the short answer, and just listening to Brian Eichenbaum, because every day we are seeing examples of credit unions of people helping people. And certainly that is very close to the ethos of what we are about. We know in simple terms that there is no more powerful opportunity to achieve that goal than simply by asking people what they personally are passionate about. And Children's Miracle Network, you've done an exceptional job with that. But at the end of the day, I'm sure even Nick, you would recognize that amongst the four of us in the conversation today, there will be 4 causes that we support. So championing choice is key to that. And I think, as I said earlier to you, Brian, by opening up a new revenue opportunity for merchants, we're already seeing evidence of few of those doing that well. And there's a massive opportunity into the future of growing the lifetime value, not only of your members, but in fact, of the supportive corporations that are part of that conduit. So just in conclusion, please feel free to click on the link to connect with us. And Steve, if you could just put that into the chat, we'd be delighted to take the conversation forward. And back to you, Brian, to close off this wonderful webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. Yes, like Ivan said, that concludes today's discussion. Again, to echo Ivan, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Brian, for all of your great insight, your collaboration, your information sharing. I think the topic was spot on. I think what you guys are both doing is amazing within your respective organizations, and I'm certainly proud to have been a part of today's event. I'd also like to thank all of the attendees for taking time out of their schedules for joining today's discussion. And we hope that you all gained additional knowledge on the importance of growing member lifetime value. And lastly, I want to thank Ivan and the Points for Purpose organization for sponsoring today's webinar. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. Take care of all of yourselves and each other.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.